Some of you may know this, a lot of you may know this. Newshub closed its doors on Friday. A lot of us are thinking, well, what does that mean for people like you and I? Maybe it doesn't mean a whole lot to you. Maybe it doesn't bother you at all. But for some of us, getting our news from different platforms means a lot. So we thought we'd get talking to somebody who's very experienced in the game, a broadcast journalist specialist, and been in the game for, I want to be respectful to Rob, who's going to join us very soon, but he knows a thing or two about journalism. And he's also a Christian as well, and he joins us this morning. Good morning, Rob. Harley.
Yeah, good morning from the beautiful Kaipara Harbour.
Oh, you're looking nice and cozy there. Can we just say that? Very cozy. All right, the doors were closed on Newshub. I actually just tuned in to the final bulletins on Friday just to see what they would feel like, with Eric Young at 5:30 and then with Samantha Hayes and Mike McRoberts at 6 o'clock. And, it was emotional as to be expected, but what does that actually mean, Rob, the closure of Newshub?
Well, it means a transition in the way news is delivered and the way news is consumed in New Zealand. This has been coming for years. The official reason from Warner Brothers Discovery was strong economic headwinds and a downturn in advertising revenue. Now, that's been a slowly rolling express train for about the last 10 years. In fact, probably for the last 20 years. When I joined TVNZ in 1975, the viewerships were very high because we didn't have digital. We didn't have a whole bunch of things. We didn't have the choice of sports that parents had to take their kids out to, 3 nights a week, like jazz ballet, underwater hockey. When I grew up, it was either soccer or cricket or rugby, and that was it. But families are busy, lifestyles are busy, people are working long hours. They're choosing when and where to access their news, and advertising revenue has been slowly going down for both channels over a number of years now. All my mates on the Sunday program, they lost their job a couple of months ago, and for both TVNZ and TV3, the strong economic headwinds with the money going to digital platforms was pretty much inevitable.
Rob, I was reading on your profile on nzonscreen.com that you were made redundant many, many years ago and have been through this sort of process before. Could you speak to a little bit about what that sort of felt like for you, and I guess give an insight as to what that would feel like for maybe some of the people that have lost their jobs just recently?
Well, there's two sorts of redundancies. There's one that comes at an opportune time in your life, and there's others that are sort of forced upon you. I was very lucky in that my redundancy came at a point at which I was wanting to switch careers anyway. I had been building what I call a parallel track out of my job in news and current affairs into making documentaries. So I'd done that for about 3 or 4 years while I was still on the assignment program. And then the offer came up, one of the inevitable downsizings came along, and they offered redundancy, and, there was money in the bank. They let a few people go, and I put my hand up and I left with a pretty satisfactory package.
Oh, so that's the good outcome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, unfortunately, most of my money went on fixing a leaky house. So my plans to retire at 55 went down the gurgler. But for the people who have been made redundant from both Sunday and Fair Go, and from many of my good mates at TV3, 300 of them gone, plus a huge number of contractors who earn their living by going out late at night and chasing fire engines and stuff, and going to distant places when TV3 needs something covered, like a flood in an obscure part of the country. It's a huge loss. And, I know intimately a number of the people at Newshub, and they're hurting. They're really hurting.
Well, our thoughts are with all your buddies at that news platform who've lost their jobs. But I want to go back to what you mentioned about 10 years ago. You could see sort of this happening. Why didn't we make adjustments with the imminent arrival of digital media? Why didn't Warner Brothers make the adjustment 10 years ago, foreseeing what was to come?
Well, it is the winds of change. I mean, the year before TVNZ declared that they were 15 million in the red, they were 150 million in the black. So all sorts of things have impacted. The arrival of things like Google and other platforms which suck up the money. I don't think people quite anticipated how quickly and how extensively that would come. But also, it's the issue of choice. Remember when I was a kid, you had one TV channel. It was black and white. Everybody gathered around, and you watched Bonanza and the news together in the evening. And then choice came. A plethora of choices that people now have. If you want to go find your news from somewhere else, you can go diving and you can choose, a zillion different sources, and people are being discerning. And, let's face it, time is tight for people. And if you're choosing what you're going to sit down and watch, if you for $8 or $10 a month can go to a Netflix or a Prime, and you've got a choice of 2,000 movies that you could watch at any time at your leisure, it was inevitable that free-to-air television, where you have to sit through ads and stuff, that was going to decline. It was an inevitability.
How do you think journalism is going to change with the kind of switch towards maybe smaller platforms or outlets that people seem to be maybe moving a little bit more towards? Newshub would fall into the category of mainstream media, as some people would call it. And I've definitely noticed a bit of a aversion or resistance amongst growing groups around sort of the big, larger media institutions and around trust and that kind of stuff, and maybe a migration more towards smaller, independent kind of outlets. How do you think that's sort of going to change the journalism landscape? And also, what do the bigger organizations need to do to try and sort of earn maybe back the trust that they've lost in some groups?
I don't know that full trust is ever coming back. I think what has happened is that there's been a fundamental ground shift in society. I think COVID was the defining thing.
Yeah.
COVID, the ripples of that are going to go on for years. What has happened is that I've never seen in 50 years of journalism such fundamental fractures in society that has been caused by, the whole mandates, the lockdowns thing. People weren't able to go and sit with dying relatives. Businesses collapsed. That's been like a tsunami in New Zealand, among other things. What has happened, though, is that a lot of the journos who worked for places like Newshub and who slowly disappeared out, is they've just reinvented it. You take someone like Paula Penfold or Melanie Reid, for example, who now do excellent online journalism and are picking up all the awards at the Voyager Awards and so forth, just because they're using platforms smarter. They're using it. They're like TV3 was when compared with TVNZ. They're lean and they're mean, and they're imaginative. And I mean, the other thing now is, of course, is that everybody's a reporter. Everybody's got an iPhone. Everybody can collect news. The marketplace is now not so much the 6 o'clock news. The marketplace is this great sharing of information. I used to teach communications for a while, and I got this was probably 20 years ago. I did a survey amongst a group of high school kids, and I said, where do you get your information from, about what's going on in the world? 60% said Facebook. That was many, many years ago.
Yeah.
Now, that's only proliferated.
Yeah. Finally, from me, you mentioned that there's just so much choice out there. So for Christians, and this is a Christian platform that we're on right now, who might see Newshub's closure as a good thing, what do you say to them?
I think Christians need to get real. The reality is that I made my shift from mainstream news and current affairs to making programs about faith. We had a golden season in the late 90s. I did a show called Extreme Close-Up, which was about the role of faith in the lives of ordinary people. TVNZ, it was a different era, but TVNZ grabbed that with both hands and put it on primetime. We got a total of 4 million viewers of that, just stories about people doing things with their faith at street level. Mixed in among all of the bad news, the dross, the horrible things that are going on in the world, there are stories of hope. And smart Christian journalists, smart Christian communicators have got to get hold of those stories. They've got to tell them. They've got to stop standing on soapboxes and whinging about what's happening with dare I say it, Pink Shirt Day, and obsessing about whether it's being taken over by LGBTI. Get over that. Go tell some good stories. The Bible's, Jesus didn't just go around quoting scripture. He would take a field or a fig or a sheep or something, and he'd build a bridge from the story or the object into truth. It has to some extent become a lost art. We need to rediscover it.
Love the hard word, Rob. Also, can I ask, are you at all hopeful for the future? I mean, you've been in the journalism media game for, like you said, decades and decades, right? So you've sort of seen it all and get to a point where maybe you could almost take a step back perspective over the whole shifting landscape of things. Are you hopeful for the future of like storytelling and journalism and people still being able to access reports and news that they can trust? Do you think that's going to find its feet again?
Yes, but I think you've actually got to be discerning. You've got to go hunting. My friends don't get their information. I mean, most of them do not get their information off the 6 o'clock news. Most of them would never make it past, the first commercial break, and then they might tune back in for sports or weather. My current projects involve, for example, working on a platform for blogs and podcasts. And I've got stories galore from all my years that I'm just retelling, and I'm just telling them on a different platform. And it's easy now. At the click of a button, you can walk around anywhere you like in life, pick up your smartphone, and you can be taken into a whole world of both information and inspiration. I have huge hope, because I know many of the people at places like Newshub and Sunday and Fairgo, they're just reinventing. They've got plans already. They're out there thinking, how do I actually reach the same audience just in different ways? It's actually quite an exciting era to be in.
Oh, on those words, then we'll leave it there, Rob. That's exciting, and that's hopeful. Thank you, Rob, for your time this morning. You've been awesome. We appreciate you taking time out of your morning.
Pleasure. Nice to talk.
Take care. God bless. That was very, very insightful.
It was cool.